Have you ever felt it? That prickling sensation on the back of your neck, the weight of invisible eyes following you when you're completely alone. In The Watcher, the terror begins with something so simple: letters arriving from someone unseen, someone who knows too much. What makes it truly horrifying isn't what's written on the paper, but the feeling that someone is always there, watching. That same fear is what you're about to experience tonight. This isn't just another story, it's a reminder that the scariest things are often the ones we can't unsee, but we can feel. A creak in the hallway when no one else is home. A shadow that shouldn't be moving. The undeniable certainty that you are not as alone as you thought. Humans are wired to fear the unknown. Darkness, silence, the places our eyes can't quite reach. These trigger something primal inside us. And when you add the sense of being watched, that's when fear becomes unbearable. That's when the ordinary transforms into something truly sinister. Tonight's story is not about monsters lurking under the bed or ghosts floating through walls. No, this story is about something more intimate, more personal, and infinitely more terrifying. The slow realization that you are being studied, followed, and haunted by something or someone you can't escape. As in The Watcher, the horror isn't in the sudden jump, but in the constant, suffocating dread. Every moment feels like a trap, every sound a warning, every corner hiding a pair of eyes that never blink. So, before we begin, ask yourself one question. Are you really alone right now? Is there someone behind you, just out of sight, breathing quietly, waiting for you to notice them? Because once you hear this story, you may never be able to shake that feeling again. This is not just a tale, it's an experience. A descent into the kind of fear that stays with you long after the video ends. If you dare to keep watching, remember, fear doesn't fade when the lights come back on. Sometimes that's when it truly begins. Back in the house, the silence pressed against him like a shroud, muffling even his own heartbeat. It was then he noticed the letter lying on the kitchen table. The envelope was thick, the kind that held no magazine or catalogue. His name was written in flowing script. He opened it slowly, the words leaping off the page. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Mr. Valletta continued, detailing things about the house, the street, almost as if written by someone who lived there. But the writer wasn't done. By being watching you, the words seemed to crawl across the page. Watching you now. He read the letter twice, each word echoing in the unnerving silence. The writer knew things about the house that only the previous owner would have known. There were mentions of peculiar drafts during winter, of the house sighing at night, of the peculiar tilt of the grandfather clock in the hall. Was this a sick joke, a prank gone too far? But who would do such a thing, and why? The days that followed brought more letters, each more unsettling than the last. There were references to his family, things that could only be seen from afar. 2 children. Aren't you lucky? The Watcher seemed to be everywhere, seeing everything, knowing everything. The windows at the back of the house were smashed, the glass tinkling down onto the hearth like fallen stars. The rocking chair on the porch swayed gently despite the lack of wind. And every night the letters arrived, each one pushing him closer to the edge of sanity. What if this isn't a game? What if there's someone out there watching, observing, taking pleasure in his fear? The line between reality and nightmare blurred. The protagonist found himself constantly glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see a pair of eyes gleaming in the darkness. Sleep offered no escape, only dreams of suffocating in a darkness that smelled of dust and decay. Each morning brought a fresh wave of terror as he tried to piece together the fragments of his shattered nerves. Who was this watcher? Why had they chosen him? And most importantly, how could he escape their clutches? The worst part, he realized, was that he couldn't defend himself against a faceless enemy. The terror was in the unseen, the lurking presence that made itself known only through whispers and shadows. Just as in The Watcher, the true horror lies not in the act itself, but in the slow, agonizing wait. It's the knowledge that something is out there, watching, waiting, that drives a person to the brink. In the end, the Watcher becomes a symbol of our deepest fears. The things that go bump in the night that we can't explain. The darkness that seems to follow us even in broad daylight. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we can't see. But maybe, just maybe, if we listen closely enough, we can hear their footsteps behind us, drawing closer with every step we take. There are some horrors that go bump in the night, but there's another kind that lurks in plain sight, hiding in the everyday until it decides to strike. The second note is bad news. Most stalkers show their cards sooner. This guy is playing his cards real close to his chest. If he's trying to spook you, this is a very effective strategy. If he wants to move in for the kill, though he'll have to up his game. We're barely 2 notes in, and the suspense is already building. What will the third note say? How much closer will he get? The house is alive. It breathes. It whispers. And they know its secrets. Or maybe it's just an old house with loose pipes and settling wood. But then they wouldn't have seen the way the floorboard creaks under the very spot they be sitting. They wouldn't have heard the dragging sound from the attic just above them. And if it was just their imagination, why did the lights flicker twice in the last 10 minutes? That's a good point. Let's not jump to ghosts just yet. Let's examine the facts. This house has been in the protagonist's family for 3 generations. Their grandparents bought it when it was just a few rooms and an acre of land. Back then, the area was rural. Now, it's a suburb. It's hard to believe that anyone could be hiding on the block. But if there is a watcher, he must live nearby. But who? There are lots of houses on Elm Street. Which one is the watcher hiding in? Maybe they should pay a little visit to their neighbors. It might help them get to know the community and put them on the lookout for a suspicious person. Plus, the watcher might make a mistake. Then they'll know exactly where he's living. It was never supposed to be this way. The house was supposed to be a legacy, a place filled with memories, not nightmares. But now it feels like a prison, 4 walls and a roof that's closing in. What do? Leave? Run away and let fear win? No, they won't. They'll find out what's going on here. And if they can't, they'll destroy the house. That's right. The protagonist is ready to take matters into their own hands. They're going to rip out the walls and check behind them. Who's stopping them? Not the ghost of their great aunt Mabel, because she died in 1938. Yeah, that was weird. Some houses have basements. Some have attics. This one has both. And in the middle of the night, the protagonist hears scratching from above. So the watcher may live in the house, but does he spend all his time in the attic? Probably not. Basements are more likely. They're dark and dank and full of junk. You can hide a lot of things in a basement. And if the protagonist is lucky, they'll find some clues about the watcher. If they're not careful, though, they might just find themselves trapped in the basement with him. Will the protagonist bring a flashlight? They'll need one. Basements are dark. They'll also need some tools. They'll have to break things. That's the only way to uncover what's really going on here. Finally, they'll need some friends. Being trapped in a basement isn't fun, especially if there's a killer down there. Having backup is always a good idea. The protagonist isn't doing this alone. Have you ever received a letter from someone who shouldn't have known your address? Perhaps a chain of events set in motion by your own curiosity, or a prank that went too far. Let's face it, we all enjoy a good mystery, especially when we can safely distance ourselves from its suspense. We sip our tea, we turn the pages. We love a good mystery until we become the mystery. Until we're trapped in a narrative where the lines between fiction and reality blur. Where the story is no longer on the page, but creeping up our stairs at 3 a.m. In The Watcher, the unknown author didn't need to reveal themselves. The fear wasn't in their presence. It was in their absence. It was the dreadful certainty that whoever they were close, and closer still with every note. The house was no longer a home. It had become a cage, and the walls, once protective, now felt like glass. In The Watcher, the letters grew more invasive over time, dripping with details only someone obsessively close could know. But what happens when the warnings stop being words and start bleeding into reality? That's when dread turns to terror. For the protagonist, the house soon became a stage for something darker. It began with noises subtle at first, then impossible to dismiss. Footsteps creaking across the upstairs hallway when no one was home. The faint sound of humming in the kitchen late at night. Doors that were closed in the evening found cracked open by morning. At first, they searched for rational answers. The wood settling, the wind, an overactive imagination. But reason crumbled the night they found the window in the living room wide open, curtains swaying in the cold air. No one had opened it. And worse, muddy footprints trailed inward, stopping just short of the carpet. The next morning, another note appeared, this one left on the nightstand beside the bed. "I'm closer than you think," it read. "No, not in the way you think. I've been closer, still closer than you think. How about now?" Now, panic consumed the house. Every lock was checked twice, every curtain pulled tight, every light left burning through the night. But the fear wasn't just in the notes, it was in the silence between them. Because silence meant whoever it was, they were watching quietly, waiting for the perfect moment to remind their victim that safety was an illusion. And then came the shadows. One night, as the protagonist sat alone in the living room, they caught movement in the reflection of the darkened television. A figure, tall and thin, standing at the edge of the hallway, heart pounding. They spun around. Nothing was there, but the air felt charged, heavy, as if the figure had only just slipped back into the shadows. Sleep became impossible. Every sound felt amplified. The ticking of the clock, the dripping of the sink, the faint, almost imperceptible scratch of fingernails against wood. It was as though the house itself had become an accomplice, amplifying fear with every creak and groan. The watcher kept playing on the protagonist's worst fears, turning their home, their sanctuary, into a place of torment. And this is the genius of psychological horror. It doesn't rely on jump scares or gore, but on building a terrifyingly plausible scenario that keeps us on the edge of our seats, wondering how we would react if we were in that situation. You know, the old saying, it's not what you see, but what you don't see that's scary. Well, that's the thing. In The Watcher, the protagonist never gets a clear answer. The ambiguity is what makes it so frightening. It's a masterclass in building tension, keeping the audience guessing and making us question what's real and what's imagined. So here's to the power of suggestion, to the unseen lurking just beyond our perception, and to the chilling realization that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we can't see. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Your support means everything to us. This wasn't just someone watching from afar. This was someone getting closer. In The Watcher, the torment never eased. It only tightened like a noose with every letter. For our protagonist, the same suffocating grip reached its peak. The house was no longer a home. It was a prison where every corner hid a threat and every breath felt borrowed. The nights blurred together, sleepless and heavy. They had taken to pacing the house until dawn, clutching a flashlight in one hand, a kitchen knife in the other. The silence wasn't silence anymore. It was anticipation, a living thing waiting to be broken. And then, one night, it began with a knock. Not on the front door, not on the windows, but on the bedroom wall. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, as though someone was standing inside the house, just inches away. Heart racing, they pressed their ear against the plaster. Nothing. Silence. And then another knock. This time lower, closer to the floor. They fled the room, flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. The hallway stretched long and empty, but the air was thick, heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. At the far end of the hall, something moved to shadow darker than the others, slipping out of sight. For the first time, they weren't just imagining. Someone was here. Panic surged, but fear froze their feet to the floor. The beam of the flashlight trembled in their grip as they edged toward the living room. The air grew colder, the shadows heavier, and then they saw it pressed against the glass of the front window. A pale face, watching, smiling, The light flickered, and when it steadied, the figure was gone. But the message was clear. The watcher was no longer content with notes and whispers. They wanted to be seen. Sleep became a war zone. Each night brought new disturbances, doors slamming shut, drawers pulled open, the faint sound of laughter carried through the vents. Sometimes they would wake to find personal belongings rearranged, little objects placed in odd patterns on the floor, as though someone had been toying with them while they slept. But the worst came at dawn. Waking with a start, they opened their eyes to see another note pinned to the ceiling above their bed, dangling on a single tack. In the same jagged hand, it read, almost close enough to touch. Like in The Watcher, the horror wasn't about what might happen, it was about knowing it already was. The boundary between safety and danger no longer existed. The Watcher was inside, always inside, waiting for the final move. And the protagonist knew, deep down, that breaking point wasn't coming. The tension ratcheted up another notch. Every creak of the old house, every sigh of wind through the trees outside, sent a jolt of fear through them. The Watcher was closing in, their presence pressing against the protagonist's skin like a second unwelcome layer. They began to doubt their own sanity. Was this all in their head? Were these really the last days of their life? The isolation was complete. Friends and neighbors, wary of the scandal, kept their distance. The protagonist was trapped in a labyrinth of fear, the walls closing in, the shadows deepening. The Watcher had become an entity, a force, and there was nowhere left to run. The protagonist was a cornered animal, every instinct screaming at them to flee, but their feet rooted to the spot. They were in the final stage of the game, and the Watcher was the predator who knew exactly where the kill was going to be. And then, one day, they didn't come home. The protagonist waited by the window, watching the road, watching for the familiar car to turn into their driveway. But it didn't come. The hours slipped by, each minute an eternity. Finally, when the sky was the color of bruises, they forced themselves to look away. Sleep offered no escape, so they threw themselves into their work, scrubbing and scouring until their hands bled. Time stopped. There was only the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. Then a key in the lock and the door opened, and it wasn't the Watcher. It was a friend, a lifeline thrown into the darkness. But the relief was short-lived. The Watcher had left a parting gift, a final message scrawled across the front door in lipstick. Next time, I'm coming with you. The protagonist screamed, the sound raw and wordless, a primal fear unleashed. Their sanctuary had been violated. Their terror, their absolute terror, was now the Watcher's delight. As dawn broke, painting the sky with false promises of a new day, the protagonist knew this was just the beginning. In the chilling saga known as The Watcher, we meet a family who, upon settling into their new home, receives a series of menacing letters from someone who appears to be watching them. What begins as a series of unsettling missives quickly escalates into a horrifying nightmare, turning the idyllic neighborhood into a claustrophobic prison and the family's lives into a terrifying game. The true horror of The Watcher, though, isn't just in the letters themselves, but in how they hollow out the family from the inside. Fear is a poison. It spreads, it corrodes, and eventually it makes you question your own mind. For the protagonist, that poison had fully taken hold. Their once vibrant existence is reduced to a desperate fight for sanity. Days become indistinguishable from nights. Every window is sealed shut, every mirror covered with cloth. Phone calls go unanswered, meals uneaten, and the outside world fades into irrelevance because the world inside has become unbearable. The silence between family members speaks volumes. The watcher may be gone, but their presence is a suffocating weight. Was the watcher still out there? Were they waiting, watching from the shadows? Or had they already slipped into the walls, into the dark corners of the house, too patient to reveal themselves? Sleep offers no respite. It is a fractured field of jolts and gasps. Sometimes they wake to find strange fingernail scratches etched into the wooden floor beside the bed. Other times they swear they hear breathing in the closet, slow and steady, timed with their own. But when they pull the doors open, nothing. Only emptiness stares back. Reality itself begins to warp. Faces seem to flicker in the windows. Voices whisper their name from the stairwell. And shadows stretch across the walls even when no light is present. Is it the watcher, or is it madness? For the protagonist, the unanswered question of who is what lingers. But deep down, another truth gnaws at them. The watcher doesn't want answers. They revel in the chaos, in the erosion of sanity. The game continues, and for the watcher, the greatest pleasure comes not from the chase, but from the unraveling. Thread by thread, the mind unravels until one reality remains. They are no longer living in the house. They are being kept in it. Now, this chilling tale isn't just a figment of imagination. It draws its roots from a series of disturbing events that unfolded in 2018 in a quiet suburban neighborhood in New Jersey. The story of the Watcher has been adapted from real-life events, letters and experiences of the Broadus family, who found their lives turned upside down when they started receiving cryptic messages from an unknown stalker. These letters, filled with unsettling observations and threats, painted a vivid picture of someone lurking in the shadows, watching their every move. As the family grappled with the terrifying prospect of an intruder in their midst, their idyllic suburban life began to crumble. The fear, the paranoia, and the feeling of being trapped took a heavy toll on their mental well-being. The unseen watcher became a constant specter, a malevolent force that seemed to derive pleasure from their distress. The mystery deepened as the true identity and motives of the watcher remained elusive. The police investigation yielded no answers, and the community was left on edge. The story gripped the nation, leaving readers to wonder about the depths of human obsession and the darkest corners of the human psyche. Now imagine this scenario, not as a story you read, but as a nightmare you're living. That's what makes The Watcher truly terrifying. It's not just a tale of a stalker. It's a study of fear itself, how it paralyzes, isolates, and distorts our perception. In the story, the Watcher becomes a catalyst, triggering a breakdown in the protagonist's reality. The house, once a symbol of safety, transforms into a prison. Windows and mirrors, once reflective of the outside world, become shrouded and avoided. Each room holds a new layer of terror, each creak of the house a potential threat. The brilliance of this narrative lies in its ability to tap into primal fears. The fear of the unknown, the fear of intrusion, and the fear of losing one's mind. The Watcher represents all these fears, be an embodiment of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of everyday life. As the story reaches its climax, the line between sanity and madness blurs. Is the Watcher real or imagined? Are the events unfolding a product of a disturbed mind or a calculated campaign of terror? This ambiguity adds to the story's unnerving quality, leaving readers to question their own perceptions and grapple with the unsettling possibility that the Watcher might not just be outside the window, but within the recesses of their own minds. In conclusion, The Watcher is more than just a horror story. It's a descent into the darkest depths of fear and paranoia. It's a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we can't see. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel like you're being watched, where the lines of reality are blurring and the whispers in the shadows seem to know your every move, remember the story of the Watcher and hold on to your sanity. For dear life, because the game has begun and you might just be the next target. Welcome back, everyone, and apologies for my absence yesterday. Some personal issues came up, but I'm back today with another video for you. So we have no new releases this week, but since it's Halloween, I figured we could do a horror movie marathon instead. As a bonus, one of these movies is based off of a story by Stephen King, and I know how much you guys love those. So let's get right into it. In The Watcher, the letters never truly stopped. They lingered, haunting the family long after they left the house, proving that some horrors don't stay behind when you walk away. They follow. That's the most unsettling truth about being watched. Even when you escape, you're never certain the eyes aren't still there, hidden just beyond sight. For our protagonist, the house became a labyrinth of fear. What began as a fresh start ended as a slow collapse into paranoia, a life consumed by shadows, whispers, and the certainty that someone's somewhere was always watching. And perhaps that S, the cruelest part of all, not knowing if the threat is real or imagined, only knowing the fear is real enough to destroy you. Because the Watcher doesn't need to reveal themselves to win. Their power lies in the silence, in the notes, in the way they twist the walls of a home into a cage. They take the most familiar places, the bedroom, the kitchen, the living room, and make them unlivable. They turn comfort into suspicion, safety into dread, and maybe, just maybe, that's what makes this story so terrifying. It doesn't take a ghost, or a monster, or something supernatural. It only takes a pair of eyes fixed on you, waiting, learning, writing. That's all it takes to unravel a life completely. So, as you sit there, listening to this story, think about your own walls, your own windows, your own silence. Have you ever felt the weight of eyes on you when you swore you you were alone? Have you ever turned too quickly, convinced someone was standing just behind you, only to find nothing there? Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it wasn't. Like in The Watcher, the fear doesn't end with the story. It lingers, crawling into the quiet corners of your room, into the shadows that stretch across your floor tonight. And when you lay down to sleep, pulling the blanket tight, you may wonder, are you being watched too? And if you think you're safe, then maybe that's exactly what they want you to believe. If you made it this far without looking over your shoulder, you're braver than most. But before you turn off this video, ask yourself, are you sure you're alone right now? Because sometimes the Watcher is closer than you think. For those who watched until the end, thank you. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and share for more content like this. Thank you to all my subscribers for your support. You all help me keep this channel running and bring these stories to life. If you would like to become a subscriber, click the link below. Now, here's a quick shout out to some of our viewers who recently subscribed. Thanks so much for supporting the channel. It really means a lot. Also, be sure to check out our new podcast, available on various platforms. Links are provided below. New episodes are released every Wednesday. And lastly, don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.